In 1913, one of the most respected psychiatrists in Europe deliberately started losing his mind. He was at the peak of his career, the heir apparent to Freud himself, a man with patience, a reputation, and a family. He decided to do something no serious doctor of his era would admit to. He turned around and walked directly into his own unconscious. He induced visions, held conversations with figures who appeared in his own head, and wrote it all down in a huge leather-bound book. The book was filled with ornate calligraphy and his own paintings around the margins. Then he hid it. For decades, that book sat in a Swiss bank vault and was not published until 2009, nearly 50 years after he died. He was not sick, he was mapping something, and he had concluded there was only one way to map it: go in personally and come back with a chart. The thing he found down there is the reason there is one person at your job whose voice in a meeting makes something inside you go white hot. And that reaction may happen over behavior that, if you are honest, is not actually that bad. The psychiatrist was Carl Jung, and his line about this is the whole video. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Here is what he meant, stated plainly. The traits that enrage you out of all proportion in other people are almost always traits you have disowned in yourself. They are not traits you lack, they are traits you buried. The tell is the disproportion. There are people you find mildly annoying, and that is ordinary human preference. But then there is the other kind, the person whose behavior creates an emotional charge enormously bigger than the offense. You rehearse arguments with them in the shower, and your jaw tightens when their name appears in your inbox. When a mutual friend says, honestly, they are not that bad, you feel a flash of rage at the friend. That intensity is not information about them. It is information about you, precise, useful information you are currently throwing away. By the end, you will know how to read it, how to use it, and how to tell it apart from the time someone is genuinely just a problem. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist born in 1875, who spent his early career at the Burghölzli Hospital in Zurich, doing something unusually rigorous for the time. He was measuring things. His word association experiments were simple. He would say a word, have someone respond with the first word that came to mind, and time the response with a stopwatch. Most responses came back instantly, but on certain words, for certain people, something snagged. The pause stretched, the person stumbled or went blank, or later could not remember what they had said. Jung called those knots complexes, places where the psyche has something loaded. That is the foundational insight of his career, and it is the one this video runs on. Emotional charge marks the spot. Wherever the reaction is bigger than the stimulus, something is buried. Jung worked closely with Freud, was positioned as his successor, and then broke with him. That rupture led straight into Jung's descent in 1913. What Jung came back with was the concept of the shadow. It is simpler and less spooky than it sounds. From the moment you were small, you learned which parts of yourself got you love, and which parts got you punished, shamed, laughed at, or ignored. The acceptable parts became you. The rest did not get destroyed, because nothing gets destroyed. It got put somewhere. The shadow is everything you have refused to be. And the whole question is what happens to material like that when it has nowhere to go? What happens is that it goes outward. You stop seeing it in yourself and start seeing it vividly and constantly in other people. That is projection, and it feels exactly like accurate perception. That is precisely what makes it so hard to catch. The shadow is usually not made of evil. It is mostly made of vitality, anger, ambition, neediness, selfishness, the desire to be looked at, rest, and saying no. These are ordinary human traits that happen to be unwelcome in the specific house you grew up in or the specific role you built. There are two flavors of intense dislike, and you will recognize both. The first is the person who openly does what you forbid yourself. If you were raised to find self-promotion shameful, the colleague who talks about their wins may feel unbearable, not because they are wrong, but because they are getting away with something you convicted yourself for. If you drive yourself brutally, the person who protects their evenings and leaves at 5 may provoke something far beyond disapproval. What you are feeling is not moral judgment. It is the grief of the sentence you passed on yourself, showing up as anger at somebody who was never charged. The second kind is quieter. It is envy wearing contempt as a disguise. Jung noticed that we project our unlived potential too, onto people we idolize and onto people we cannot stand. The scorn you feel for someone doing the thing you always meant to do has a very particular flavor, and part of you knows it. Work concentrates this like nowhere else. You cannot leave. There is forced proximity, and a hierarchy makes the feeling unsafe to express. It is a stage where everyone is publicly performing the exact traits your identity is built on suppressing. Work is almost a perfect machine for generating projection. But not all dislike is projection. Some people are genuinely destructive. Bullies, credit thieves, and harassers exist. If someone is actually harming you or others, looking inward is terrible advice. Document it, escalate it, and deal with it as the concrete problem it is. The distinction is testable. Ask whether a neutral observer would see anything close to what you are feeling. Ask whether your reaction tracks the actual damage or a trait, regardless of whether damage occurred. Are you bothered by what they did or by what they are? Real harm produces proportionate, specific, actionable anger. Shadow produces fixation, disproportion, and an inability to stop thinking about someone who has barely affected your life. Here is the line worth carving into your desk. The intensity is never about them. The intensity is the message. Here is how you run this on the person you were already thinking about at second 12 of this video. First, write the indictment, then flip it. Get specific and petty. Do not write, "They are annoying." Write the actual charges. They interrupt, take credit, act fake nice to leadership, or never do the boring work. For each item, ask 3 questions. Where do I do this in a form I have made invisible to myself? Where do I want to do this and forbid myself? And who punished me for this when I was young? You are looking for the item that produces a small internal flinch when you read it. Jung spent his early career timing that flinch with a stopwatch, and it is still the most reliable instrument you have. Second, look underneath the contempt for the envy. This is the fastest move, and it stings. Ask yourself, what freedom does this person have that I have denied myself? The self-promoter claims credit you are too humble to take. The person who leaves at 5 has permission you will not give yourself. The blunt person says the thing you swallow every week. When you find it, your hatred converts into something genuinely useful, a to-do list of things you are not letting yourself have. Third, integrate a controlled dose. Integration does not mean becoming them, and it does not mean approving of them. It means taking back the trait in a version you choose. If the buried thing is ambition, state one accomplishment out loud this week without softening it. If it is boundaries, say no to one thing. If it is rest, leave at 5 once and sit with the discomfort. The energy you have been spending to hold that trait underwater comes back to you as capacity. The coworker may then become noticeably less annoying, even though they did not change. Write the indictment, find the envy, take back a dose. That is the whole machine. But there is one last thing, and it is the one that stings. Think about how much of your actual life this person occupies. The commute, the shower arguments you win brilliantly against someone who is not there, and the dinner where you brought them up again. Maybe they even get a cameo on Sunday evening. You have given a person you do not like a permanent unpaid tenancy in your head. They have no idea. They are at home, fine, and not thinking about you at all. But that is not the real cost. Every hour spent hating the trait in them is an hour of not meeting it in yourself. That is not a side effect. It is the function. Hatred is an anesthetic. It is far more comfortable to loathe something out there than to discover it in here, and your psyche will happily fund that arrangement indefinitely. Meanwhile, the buried thing does not sit quietly. It acts through you without your permission. You become subtly obstructive in meetings, cold in ways you would deny, or petty in small decisions while remaining completely convinced that you are the reasonable one. That was the part Jung took most seriously. What you refuse to make conscious does not stop operating. It runs your life from underneath, and you experience the results as your personality, bad luck, or the unfortunate fact that you keep ending up around people like this. Here is the hardest sentence in this video. That person most likely is not doing anything to you. They are just standing in the one spot where you can finally see a piece of yourself. So if there is someone at your job you cannot stand, hear this clearly. There is a test that settles it, and it is brutally simple. You will change jobs eventually. Somewhere in the second month at the new place, you will notice someone with a different name and a different face. They will be a completely different person, and the exact same thing will start to rise in your chest. That is the tell. That is how you know it was never the coworker. The good news is that this makes it solvable, because the one variable you can actually reach is the one you carry between buildings. Do the work once and you stop meeting them, because the person living rent-free in your head was never really them. It was the part of you they were standing in front of. If this reframed how you see the people who get under your skin, subscribe. There is a lot more of this kind of edge coming.